welcome to the Soccer Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Mowbray, and in each episode I will discuss the key topics that impact on football coaching from the foundation and youth development phases. Thanks for listening, I hope you enjoy this episode. Paul, welcome back to the Soccer Coaching Podcast. It's great to have you back on again.
No, thank you, Scott. It's great to be invited back on again. And obviously the work you've been doing on the podcast has been brilliant. Listen to all the episodes. You've had some outstanding guests on, so really proud and pleased to be on again. Thank you.
For those that maybe haven't heard the episode we did previously or can't remember, it's over a year ago now, I think, wasn't it?
It would have been, I think, September 2019 it came out, so season before last, I think, yeah.
Well, I came to see one of your sessions with the under-10s at Arsenal. It was absolutely outstanding. It was all the things that, all the coaching things that I aspire to try and be in my little world. But, you set a very high standard, so I'm still working to get up there. There was so much in there. I mean, I think you call yourself a bit of a foundation phase specialist, but I think that sells yourself short a little bit, because that's certainly one thing you clearly do very, very well. But there was so much other stuff going on there that I know would transcend to all age groups. So it was really fascinating to see. That was great to talk through that. And if it's okay, we'll revisit some of that stuff now, and also move on to a slightly more a slightly newer topic that kind of corresponds with a hobby you've done as well over the last year. Does that sound all right?
That sounds great. Yeah, looking forward to it.
So just firstly then, since we spoke last time, how have things been? What have we been up to?
Yeah, it's obviously been a very unusual year that we've all experienced in all aspects of our lives. Obviously, football's been affected, as have everything else in our personal and private lives. But if I think about when we last met and obviously recording the previous podcast, that season was the tail end of that season, if you like. That's when everything happened with the first lockdown in March of last year. I don't think any of us could foresee what it would become and how long it would go on for, and how it would affect everything from schooling and all the home schooling we've had to do with our kids, and how it affects our day-to-day lives. And of course, it's affected the football world at the top end and at the level that I was working at as well. So yeah, it's been very eventful. Learned a lot regarding how to try and provide a football program to kids through a computer screen and on the phone, and it's been an interesting few months to try and work in a very, very different way.
Yeah, well, I won't pry too much about the homeschooling thing, because if you ask me about that, it'd be an hour and a half just me moaning about my kids, who are quite good kids, but it's getting harder every week. But we'll leave that one alone. But I am interested to know then, you've gone through that experience then after last year, like many coaches have, of trying to keep your players engaged and work with them remotely and stuff. And we've done a little bit with our little grassroots team. Obviously, I'm sure it won't be anything like you guys have done, but we've tried. How have you found it? And, what kind of did you find did work, or what didn't work with that remote kind of coaching?
I think when it first happened and we were told to stay away and to work from home, it was very much a case of, right, first things first, let's just make sure the kids are okay. Let's make sure the parents are all right. So I made it a priority to speak to the parents on a regular basis, to reassure them that I was there to support them, to help with as much as I could do. And that's not just providing a football service, that's helping them with anything that they needed. So whether that was just a phone call to talk about anything football related or anything otherwise, whether that was some help around the kids at home with their homeschooling. Of course, we've put on lots of different activities, whether that was technical sessions or analysis sessions, which have worked great online, to be fair, when you can share your screen and show footage of academy football or some best practice first team clips, and you've got the kids working in little breakout rooms, and we're doing some annotations on some clips, and it's been great, that aspect of it. So there's certain things that I think we can take forward when we do go back to normality, and we can use those platforms in everyday life, and we can work with the kids in those ways. And for example, the player and parent reviews that we do 4 times a year, they work great online, because you're able to show footage of the kids. The conversation can flow nice. When you've got a lot of meetings that night, the parents know that they've got their 15-minute slot, and then you have to move on to your next video meeting. And just, there are certain ways I think you can work remotely that does lend itself to working well with academy footballers. Of course, the one thing that we've all missed consistently is working with them on the grass. Nothing can obviously replace that. And the variety in the boys' games program, which hasn't been able to happen. They're all the things that the kids miss. But ultimately, I think even more important than that, they just miss seeing their friends.
Yeah, so much.
Seeing their friends. And that's for school as well. I know the kids have been back to school and then off again, as mine have, all over the country. But the kids miss seeing their friends. And that's more important than any football education. That's about them engaging and interacting with each other. So if you can put on an online session and the kids can all see each other and interact with each other, do you know what? At times it hasn't even mattered what the content of the activity or the event is. It's just get the kids on, have some fun with them, tell some jokes, tell some stories, let the kids engage with each other. And you might spend 30 minutes talking about anything other than football before you get to the football bit. But they've really, really benefited from that. So for them socially, just getting them together, getting them engaging with each other, that's the bit that they're missing the most. But we've done everything we could to make sure that bit is still part of their lives.
Yeah. Well, it's so true. I mean, you mentioned about the well-being bit, and that is such an important part now, isn't it, for everybody, not just the players, but for coaches, for everybody, for parents. We're all missing it in different ways. For a lot of the parents, I think they miss it more than some of the kids do, the whole coaching thing and, going out watching their kids play and be part of that. Oh, and I think they struggle with with not having the football,
Yeah, I mean, speaking to the parents on a very regular basis, they've missed it. They've missed it a lot. The first time they've ever had any sort of prolonged time when they've not been able to stand pitchside and watch their son train. And it's still taking them a lot of time to get used to that. And watching them back on Huddle, which is our video analysis platform that's used, is not quite the same.
No.
And being there and experiencing it, and us as coaches, we've missed them being there because they're part of the family. They're part of that triangle of support around it's us, it's the player, it's the parent, and put those three together, and you can all work together for the benefit of each individual. So when they're not there, it has been difficult. Some of the players have benefited from it to some extent, because whether that means that there's not as much pressure on them and there's not as many eyes on them, and they can feel a bit more risk taking and a bit more ambitious in the way that they can express themselves, that's great. But there's nothing better than your mum or dad or your brother or sister just giving you a little thumbs up from time to time in a session, just a little bit of eye contact and a smile. The kids have missed that, and the parents have missed being able to do that considerably.
When I came to see your session, Paul, I was blown away by not just what you did out on the grass with the players, but also the way you positioned all the whole session as well. Really, from before the session, during the session, and after the session, and the way the players had obviously been engaged in that environment for a period of time, because they took it for normal. It's just the way you did things with that team. I wondered how much of that helped with the players and being remote learners, if you like, because if they're used to thinking about the session beforehand and doing some stuff outside of the session, you'd set them some work to sometimes before they even came, or once after the session had finished. Did that make it a bit easier to be able to do some of the things you did with these players remotely?
Yeah, I think so, because it puts you in a mindset of not just thinking about that grass time. And the grass time is absolutely fundamental. That's when they're playing football. That's when they're learning with the ball at their feet, and when they're engaging in a football environment with their friends and with their teammates. But there's an awful lot of learning that can happen beforehand, afterwards, whether that's planning and making them aware of the session and linking the session to a particular theme or another sport maybe, and examples of how that sport links into the themes and topics of your session. And of course, when you finish, there's the social aspect of being in the changing room and how you reflect upon the session, how the players reflect individually upon what they've done well, what they could do better, how they peer-to-peer review each other. I think that's absolutely key. For a young player to receive feedback from their 9 or 10-year-old teammate, that's far, far more powerful than anything I could ever provide for them. So those things have put me in a good position, I think, to be able to provide an online environment that's conducive to young players learning from each other, not just from us. And that's what a player-led environment should ultimately look like, us prompting it and supporting it, but it being driven and run by the young people or young players themselves.
And I know it's hard for you to probably comment broadly across the country on this, but just what's your gut feel? How this last year has been for players and the impact it's had on them? How much do you think it's going to have held them back, or compared to a normal year, how much catch up will these players need to put in place to kind of almost get back to where they were. And I know some players probably haven't gone backwards, still maybe some players have actually gone on in different ways, but and other players might have stayed the same. But I would imagine for many, this interruption would have slowed their progress down compared to what otherwise might have been. Do you think that's a fair thing to say? Or would you say actually that the players just will get through this and catch up really quickly and they won't be behind a normal year?
It's a really good point. I mean, I hear this conversation regarding schooling as well. And parents and other people saying, oh, the kids have got all this catching up to do. But who are they catching up with? Because all the kids are in the same position. They're all in the same situation as each other. Young people are the most resilient type of people you will ever meet. They're far more resilient than I think us as grown-ups. They're far more adaptable. They're far more flexible. And you know what? As soon as those kids go back to training and playing games, they'll just go at it with absolutely everything they've got. So I've got full faith in all age group of players. Of course, it might take them some time to get back up to speed, but I don't see it taking them very long at all, just of how adaptable these young people are. And what I want really to see from young people through this whole situation is them learning about how much they do miss being active, how much they miss their football, how much they miss their teammates and the social aspect of it, and throwing all that energy back into some really, really positive training and game environments when they do go back. And I've full faith that young people can do that.
I'd like to talk about something you've been doing and worked on over the last few months in a bit, if that's okay. And that's the book, but we'll come back to that because I think it will dovetail into the kind of theme of the topic of today's podcast. But before we do, and we've probably covered some of this stuff already, but just before we do, it might be worth, if you don't mind, just describing your kind of coaching philosophy and principles, which we did touch upon last time, but I'll be interested to know, if you don't mind, just going over that again. But also, has anything changed since we spoke like 18 months or so ago? It may not have done, or you may have had some slightly different thoughts.
Yeah, I think also we did speak about this last time, and has anything changed? I think they would have had to have changed slightly with the way things have been for the last sort of 12 to 14 months or so, however long it's been. I think the way I feel about the game now is I view it in a lot more holistic way than I ever did. I think I did to some extent prior to this whole situation sort of beginning. But now I really, really think about the time that you spend with the group is far more valuable than just the 90 minutes or the 2 hours of ball rolling time that you spend with them. So for me, coaching is about connecting. It's about communicating with young people. And that's before you then even start talking about football being the vehicle that drives this. So I think you've got to get to know your players on a deep, deep personal level. Obviously, they'll share with you the things that they feel comfortable to share. There'll be things that they perhaps are unwilling to share, and that's absolutely fine. Everyone's got their own private lives, so that's absolutely fine, and I totally understand that. But if you're able to get to know your players, and I don't just mean get to know what football team they support or what their favourite colour is, for example, but I mean getting to know them, getting to know their family. What do mum and dad do for a living? Who do they live with? How far away from the training grounds do they live? Take an active interest in whether they've got any siblings or not. What are their names? What do they do? Any conversation I have with a young player at the beginning of a training session will involve school. What have you done at school today? Try and ask as many open-ended questions as possible. There's that classic, how was school today? And the player would often say, yeah, it was all right. Or, yeah, it was good. Okay. Yeah. And then they run off and start playing or they start warming up. So the way I view coaching now is, can you engage with people that will involve a sparking of a brief, and it might only be a brief 30-second minute conversation, but engage with them, really consider what you're going to ask them and why you're asking them that. So yeah, let's all be organized and planned with our sessions and our progressions and our groups and our themes and our topics. But far more important than that, think about the individuals within that session. How am I going to engage with this player? What's going to be exciting for them in this session? What's going to be challenging for them in this session? That's going to completely differ from another player that's in that session. So yeah, session planning is important. It's key to putting on a good session. But when I do it now, I think about every individual within that group. I think about a moment in a session. Yeah, that player's going to struggle there. So this is what I need to be asking of them, or I'm expecting them to ask this to me at that point. And that's the detail I'll go into now. Whereas 5-10 years ago, it was, here's my session, that's my session plan, X's and O's, on I go. So now I think far more about the person than I do the player. And that's allowed me to connect with people, to bond with people, young players and parents as well, on a real deep personal level. And that's when you get fantastic learning and fantastic education from these people, because they trust you and they know that you're interested in them as a person, not just as a footballer.
That came evident when I saw the session before, about you kind of valued that psychological and social side as much as you did the technical side of things and the physical side. Also, what I noticed in the sessions that you did, and I don't think you've mentioned it today, and maybe I didn't mention that last time either, was just about how much you promote game intelligence in what you do and getting the players to really think. And I guess that's part of that, right? If they've got the confidence to be able to articulate and talk to you and have an opinion about stuff, that also transfers out in how they play their football.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything I do has to have an element of play. Very, very play orientated. I love that image of what school football used to look like on the playground during break, and it looked absolutely crazy, didn't it? There was multiple footballs. As a bystander, you wouldn't know who the two teams were. There might be a game going one way, a game going another way, someone on a skipping rope, someone playing hopscotch, someone doing ball juggling on their own. And that craziness, but that chaos that might look messy and disorganized for an onlooker, but do you know what? Those kids know exactly what they're doing, and there's so much game understanding that can come from that. So I love the play oriented aspect of planning, repetition without things being repetitive. If something becomes repetitive, I think it can become mundane. That's the last thing you want to happen in your session, because that's going to turn players off straight away. So that fun element, the direction, the repetition without being repetitive, the play aspect of it. And we actually did something recently when, for the whole week in training, the players didn't wear bibs, which is that classic, put the kids in their bibs. You might have 2 teams or 3 groups, whatever it might be. But whose benefit is that for? That could be, as you really step back and think about it and evaluate it, is that more for us? Is that more for the coach to distinguish between the teams and the players? So for the whole week, and that wasn't just in the games that we did, in the practices, in the warm-ups, in the strength and conditioning, and it was team orientated, it was competitive, that was players against each other, and it took a few moments for them to work out who was on their team and who they were up against. But come the Friday night, they knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
And myself, our support coach, Josh, who obviously we thought to do this, and it came a lot from him, to be fair. Fantastic young coach that I was very open-minded to take this on board, this idea, and something that I'd thought about, and for kids to try. Great, let's see how it goes. We were doing our sessions, and the kids obviously weren't wearing their bibs, but knew exactly what they were doing. And we had another member of staff come out with our bib bag that he brought from the kit room, because he thought we'd just forgotten to bring it out. I was like, fine, leave it there. The kids know what they're doing. This is all planned. It's fine. We're not going to wear bibs. So there's that expectation of, oh, that doesn't look right. That doesn't look the norm. That doesn't tie in with what all the other sessions look like. But it's what those kids needed at that point.
Yeah.
They needed that for their awareness and their appreciation of their teammates, and for their acknowledgement of who their opponents were, and time and space and all that orientation that goes with that. So for them to not wear bibs for 1 week, I think within those 4 sessions, or those 3 sessions rather, there was a heck of a lot of fantastic learning that went on. I think as a coach, you've got to be ambitious. You've got to think outside the box at times, and you've got to try stuff. If it doesn't work, you know what? The kids will let you know within no time at all that that's not right. That's not working for us. So you've got to try things. You've got to take risks as a coach. Not everything will work. The kids are so honest and opinionated at all age groups. Then they'll let you know before long.
What a great example, because something like just not using bibs, which actually requires like less kit and less time and less energy and effort on the coach's point of view, can get so many gains out from the players, right? So now they've got to concentrate more. They've got to get their heads up and look. Yeah. So it's not cheating. It's just an easy way to get some rewards without doing anything. Play a 5-a-side and just have no bibs, and then see how that goes. And
they play football at school when they're allowed to, obviously, with things as they are, maybe not, but in a normal way of life, they'll play football every break time, every lunchtime. I hope that kids still have that element of playing outside with their friends at home or in the garden down the field. They don't wear bibs then.
Yeah, and they don't argue. They get on with it. There's no problem, is there? No. Right. It's the thing we do for coaches, right? It makes us feel better, being able to know who's on which team and stuff. The kids don't need it.
Yeah, a session hasn't got to look clean and tidy and efficient. It's got to look chaotic. it's got to look at times disorganized. But as long as the coach has planned it to look that way and they know what's going on, you've got to put a lot of trust in the kids and a lot of faith in the kids, because that's what youth football at the younger age groups that I'm experienced mostly in, that's what it should look like.
So the theme for this episode is around the art of storytelling in coaching. That's what we're going to talk about. That's okay, Paul. And I think it's a fantastic topic, and I'm looking forward to some of the things we're going to chat about. But would you mind giving us some background as to why we're going to talk about this, and maybe some of the stuff that you've done over the last, I'm going to guess, the last at least 6 months to get that book together, but a bit of background behind this, if that's all right?
Yeah, I think it's something, writing a children's picture book story was something that I've always had an aspiration to do. From having my own kids, it's something that everyone loves a story. The kids love a bedtime story, and I had it in my head from quite early on after having my own. This was something that I'd love to do, to create a character, to create my own story, to have it published, to be able to hold it in my hands and say that it's something that I'd put together and I've worked hard for, and to put up on the kids' shelves alongside. And there is one.
I'm holding up my copy just so you can see. Look, it's not signed. It's signed by you, Paul. I need it autographed. I'm going to keep it to you.
I'll send you a signed copy. That's fine. The second one comes out in a few months. I'll send one to you as well. But I have my own story alongside all the other ones, like the Julia Donaldson ones, and I'm a big fan of the Rob Biddulph stories and the Rachel Bright stories. Fantastic visualization and images and lessons that kids can learn within these make-believe stories of colourful, fun, quirky characters. And I wanted to try and see if it's something that I could do and step outside my comfort zone. So at the beginning of the first lockdown in March of last year, I just started thinking of ideas and characters and researching on what sort of stories children like to read and for what benefit. Anecdotes and stories and analogies are something that I use on a very regular basis in coaching. So to take it to another sort of avenue of actually writing my own, to link it back into my football coaching, was something that I was really passionate and motivated to go and try. And I'm in a position now where I've got a book published. The response for it has overwhelmed me completely. A lot of the players that I've coached have bought it, and the parents are sending me pictures, and I'm getting really lovely feedback. It's getting 5-star reviews on Amazon, and it's made me feel, yeah, this is something that I think I could pursue. I wrote a number of these stories across the months from the first lockdown. The second one is currently being illustrated, ready to come out in April or May. And it's something that I want to just see where it takes me, really. And yeah, as I say, the response has been overwhelming and hugely positive, and I'm really proud of it.
And so you should be, Paul. I mean, I don't say this, I say it sincerely. The book is excellent, and it's obviously something that you've got a passion about and a natural ability to achieve, because it can't be easy writing that stuff. I think these things always seem, when you read them, like, oh, it's easy, but the minute you try and do something like yourself, you realize just how hard it is. And it's a lovely book. It's got a great story in it, which we'll come on to, like, stories in a second, but well done for putting it together. And actually, that sounds like quite a tight turnaround time for concepts around kind of March to get it out and published within a year. That's quite an achievement, I would guess.
Yeah, I'm someone that works very positively when I've got a goal to work towards, and at the same time as writing these rough drafts of the stories, I started an online diploma in creative children's story writing, which I'm just sort of finishing off now. And I started that, and that's been great, and that's allowed me to write longer length stories and find out about how to plot, how to create characters, how to provide intrigue and suspense and comedy within short story children's writing. And I set myself a target to release a book and finish the course within the space of 12 months. And, you know, when you're working with young footballers, it's all about learning objectives, individual development plans. So I wanted to have something in my head and something for me to work towards as well, that was for me, but ultimately would hopefully benefit other people as well. So the book came out at the end of January. The course, I'm pretty much on the way to finishing that. So I've worked hard to get this done, and it's helped having that that goal and that end sort of date to work towards, because that means you've got to really knuckle down, and you've got to try and juggle everything else with it, like your work, your family life,
Yes.
and all the other things that we have to deal with on a daily basis with this working alongside those.
Well, I know you well enough to know that when you set yourself a goal, you're going to achieve it. So I'm not surprised it's been 12 months. It was just a very ambitious goal, but well done. The book is excellent. I've got my kids love it. My little nieces and nephews, a bit younger than mine too, adore it. I've kept the copy from. I won't let them, they keep asking for it. I keep keeping it because I want to read it. We've got about 15 cousins and nieces and nephews between everybody, so we're getting around everyone reading it to them. So, and I look forward to the second one when it comes out. But obviously, so the books are great, and they really are. But I guess the trick here is like how we link this into the world of coaching, right? Because there is a crossover here, and you're right to recognise it. And I'm curious, I guess, to know a couple of things here. One is, did the coaching influence the storytelling and that, or did you kind of work out the storytelling behind you, and actually then you've realised actually, well, coaching is part of storytelling as well?
Yeah,
it's what came first.
Yeah, I mean, I've been coaching for many years now, and I came to the realisation that I was using anecdotes and analogies a lot in coaching, and using short stories a lot anyway. So it was a natural consequence to start doing the story writing myself. But storytelling is so prevalent in coaching for a lot of coaches who are probably doing it without even realizing it. So a story isn't just something that involves, like the book, for example, a character, and they go through a particular situation, they overcome a particular difficulty, and there's a moral at the end of it. A story could be a quick analogy that you link a football moment to. It could be a brief anecdote that allows positive transfer from a non-football moment into a football action or to a football situation. So the short story or the anecdote can connect that information to that when the player hears it, they then feel a particular emotion that links to the story. So I think to try and link stories to sport, it's all about visualization, isn't it? And it enables the young player to visualize the scene or the moment in their head and then apply it to that real life situation. And there are countless analogies and anecdotes that I've used in coaching in my roles that I've undertaken that I still use to this day, and they have nothing to do with football at all. But the players, they recognize what it means. For example, one I've used is trying to apply the sense of pressing and counter-attacking with setting off fireworks. So what do you do when you set off some fireworks? You put all the fireworks together really, really closely. You compact them together. You then step back, and when the fireworks explode, they go off in a multitude of different directions. It's exciting, it's powerful, it's energetic. So for me to explain to the kids, they're putting the fireworks together, close, compact, organized. That's how you go and win the ball back. That's the image in your mind of counter pressing or pressing. You do it together, you do it close, you do it organized, it's planned. But then when you win the ball back, that's when the fireworks go off. That's when there's an explosion of excitement, of energy, and of movement in different directions, and it's spontaneous and it's unpredictable. So in those moments now, I just shout out to the kids, fireworks. And there's that buzzword. You haven't got to explain the story or tell the anecdote again once you've already told them it, because they link that buzzword of fireworks into compact, win the ball back, be structured, be organized, and then there's be exciting and adventurous and spontaneous when you win it. And that's that firework going off. And just the buzzword, it triggers that emotion in their minds. So that's an example of how a story or an anecdote can transfer to a real life football moment.
That's a great example of how you can use a story to work on something, I guess, physical or tactical. But I guess a lot of this would also come around to some of that, again, back to that psychological and social stuff. So that life lessons and life skill things. I mean, dare I say it, things like resilience and, that kind of stuff. Do you see that as well with how you could potentially use stories with players? I'm thinking maybe, I don't know any examples. I'm not as good as you are, but I'm going to guess if you could have a story around a character or someone that showed some resilience in a situation that maybe wasn't football related, how you could then use that with a player that maybe was struggling with resilience on the football pitch. Would it work in that context?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that example of the firework, that's an on-pitch moment. That's an example about a football action, a playing principle of counter pressing and then counter attacking. So that applies to grass time, ball rolling time. But there are plenty other moments that apply to off the pitch when there might be a difficult moment, whether that's a player who's recently become injured and is not playing, or they're experiencing bad or poor run of form, or an inconsistent run of form, or they're having a hard time at school. So yeah, a story can take them away from the moment they're experiencing, and they can immerse themselves in something else, which of course they can then apply back to the current situation that they're in. So any story for me has got to have five key principles. So it's got to have an interesting main character, for example. It's got to be someone that the young person can relate to. It's got to be someone that, I mean, in my stories, I use a lot of animal characters, but the most important thing for me is that the kids can relate to that particular character. So they've got to almost have humanized qualities, such as the book that I've got out at the moment is about a tap dancing frog. Now, I don't know if you agree, but I've not seen many tap dancing frogs in my time.
Not called Terry.
But if you can apply an unusual characteristic to an animal character straight away, that's different, that's quirky, that's interesting. That gets the kids to buy into something. So that's the first thing you've got to think about. The second thing is, what's their passion? What's their motivation? What do they want to excel in? So again, referring back to the book, that's tap dancing. That's performing on stage at the West End. That's the character's aspiration. That's what they want to excel in and be ambitious to dream about. But that's all great. Thirdly, there has to be a difficult moment. There's got to be a problem. There's got to be an obstacle to overcome, something that's endangering their dream. And now when you speak about that with the young player, if it's timed right and you're explaining and you're telling the story at the right time when perhaps they're experiencing a problem, already they're starting to think, I can apply that to what I'm feeling right now. The character's having an obstacle or a difficult moment. How are they going to overcome it? So that's the fourth thing, the resolution to the problem. How do they overcome that issue? How do they overcome that obstacle and that difficulty? Is it through their own doing? Is it through help from friends? Whichever of the two it is, there's going to be a resilient learning behavior that's a natural consequence of it. And then the fifth thing is the moral. There's got to be a life lesson, a value to the story, a relevance to the story, but it's something that you can take away, learn about, and then apply back to your situation. So if you can plan a story or an anecdote to have those 5 key stages, of course the young player can make it relevant to how they're feeling. And if they're struggling, you can always prompt it, because then you might say, whatever the character's difficulty was, how are you feeling about this at the moment? If it's an injured player, how do you feel about being on the physio table when all your mates are out training? And then you can start marrying the two together. So it might sound a bit quirky and a bit different, but in my experience, young players, they love the linking of a non-football story to how they're feeling, and there's definite positive transferability for me.
Does the story have to be fictitious, or could you use real stories?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I think for it to be fictitious is great, but for some players, they're not always going to be able to link the two together. And if you have to prompt it too much, I think you lose a little bit of the lesson and a little bit of the reason and relatedness of that story. So, I mean, I think about team talks at halftime or during breaks, but in games or prior to games. What do we talk about in team talks generally? We talk about all the things that the players are struggling with. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do better. We're struggling at this. But how about tell them a story of a very, very similar moment they had in a previous game or a previous training session? So rather than talk about the now, refer back to the past. Refer back to past experiences they had. What did we do last time? How did we solve the problem then? How can you use those memories to allow the players to live back in that moment? And then it's up to them to try and transfer it to the present. So that's a story. That's a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you can even ask them for their opinion. Boys, can you remember a game when we were experiencing the same sort of issue we're having today? And they'll think, okay, oh, it was that game at home or that game away. Let's talk about it. How did you feel? Oh, we felt like this. Okay. So what did we do? Oh, well, we did this. And then whether you get them talking in pairs or in small groups, or you prompt learning from a from individuals, that's a story, and it's one that they've actually lived. And sometimes a story like that holds as much value or more than another one that's created with fictitious characters, because they've already experienced that story themselves and they've lived it themselves. And there's no better learning that happens than reflecting upon past experiences.
This strikes me as being similar to the concept of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. Is that something you've been familiar with and looked at? Because it sounds like there's some crossover there.
Yeah, I think when you're a football coach and you become a little bit older and more experienced, there's only so many session plans you can look at. There's only so many you can look at, and X's and O's that you read about. So there's more to it than that. So the learning aspect of it and how players want to develop themselves as young people, and the visualization and imagination side of football coaching is something that I'm far more interested in now than I ever have been. And I've seen the positive influence it can have on young people. When I think about, again, the storytelling aspect with youngsters, at the end of each season, I've always made sure that there's a highlights reel created. I sit in the analysis room with the lads, and we get all the best bits of the players from that past season. That's moments in training, games. That's not neglecting any player. So every player gets some screen time, whether that's some fantastic skill, the goalkeeper's making some brilliant saves, the more defensive players making some brilliant tackles and driving out from the back. And it's all visually really, really exciting and dynamic and positive. You make it look colourful. You put some fantastic music behind it. Get the kids in the classroom. Invite the parents in, obviously, when that was all allowed to happen. Hit play, turn the lights off, and a 10-minute video. You've got parents and players in tears at the end of it.
Yeah,
and it's magic. It's absolutely magic, and it summarises everything that we should be involved in football for. And it's providing memorable experiences. It's allowing kids to dream, and it's allowing them to reflect and think, yeah, there's a lot of thought and care gone into that. And that's a story. You're showing them a story of themselves. And it's a delight to put those things together. And you can find yourself getting emotional putting it together, because it's time you spent with these kids and these parents, and you connect on such a deep level with them that it's only fair that they see their development and are able to watch each other perform and excite and progress. It's a really exciting sort of and valuable thing to do at the end of each season.
Does this work with older players? I'm completely sold on it, and I can see how well, especially you, would do this with younger players. But can you use the art of storytelling and being creative and using these images and these anecdotes with older players? Would it be as effective?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a colleague of mine at the club, Simon, who's a fantastic storyteller, and he's a fantastic coach that's worked with the older age groups in the youth development phase and older in their later teens and first team football. And he's a magic storyteller, and he pitches it just right. He speaks with the right language, with the right tone, with the right pitch. He'll pause at the right time, and he's got the players' attention fantastically well. So this whole concept of telling stories, and whether they're fictitious or real life, and they're ones that the players have experienced, or they're ones that relate to other players that, for example, me or Simon would have coached previously. If you can do it right, and you might not get it right the first few times, but the more you try it and the more you try and communicate on a deep level with these players, they'll certainly benefit from it. So this is not something that I think is just prevalent and relevant to young players. The terminology you use and the way you express yourself may well differ. I'm pretty sure it would differ from talking to a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old compared to a 15 and a 16-year-old, because they're opposite ends of the age range, but they're still kids. Yeah. They're still kids, and every kid loves a story, and the best storytellers for me have often put on the best sessions.
And what about that then, Paul, around whether or not it has more impact if you kind of narrate a story, if you like, or a short tale to a group compared to maybe an individual? Is there a difference in that, or is it a case of actually, you use the appropriate story depending on the circumstance? So if it's a group thing you need to discuss, you use a group story for the group. But actually, if there's a player that's got an individual issue or a challenge, then maybe you can have some time with that one individual to have a different narrative around that might help them. Is that something you have to kind of master as a bit of a coach about how and when you use these stories?
Yeah, I think so. I think you've got to time it with the right group and with the right player for the right reasons. I think if it's something that you're using for in a group environment to get the lads sat down, nice and quiet, all of a sudden there's calmness. You really consider your body language and the way that you're talking to them and the eye contact that you use. And for those 2 or 3 minutes, it might just be you talking. That's the best way to use it in a group, to calm yourself, to speak with the right tone and pitch, and to relax it into whatever it is that you're trying to tell, and help the players within that story or that anecdote. I think if it's with one player, it might be more energetic. It might be more pause, ask the player for their opinion, a bit more two-way. Let's have a two-way discussion. So this happened to this character. What do you think about that? How can you apply that to how you're feeling at the moment? Does that relate? Can you imagine or can you visualize how that might apply to you in this moment? So I think one-to-one, it's a bit more two-way. I think when you're with a group, it's almost like that storytelling aspect of it works better when it's just one voice for that moment. But as long as it's brief and it's done for the right amount of time, I think eventually when you practice it, you do get great buy-in from the kids.
And that's the trick, right? I mean, it's another skill for us coaches, if we want to work on, right? To try and get better at. Because actually, if you've got an effective tool like that in your own kit, like you might want your players to have some effective tools in their kit for dealing with situations on the pitch, it's another thing that we could practice should we want to as coaches. You don't need to have it. Maybe you could probably survive without it, and a lot of us do. But actually, if you can master this as another tool to have in your locker, well, in certain circumstances with certain players and groups, that may be the thing that actually can really make a difference. So would you describe it? Have I got, because I'm trying to put it in my head now as where I see it fitting in my own personal development. It's a type of intervention, isn't it? I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a coaching behaviour. I don't think it's something that's totally separate or detached from coaching, the list of coaching styles and behaviours that we all know about. It's just something that you can add as a positive addition. It might not be for everybody. You might get coaches that want to be just very football orientated and let's talk about tactics and football 7v7 up to 11v11 and let's just talk about the game. But for me, there's far more value in learning about football using other separate aspects that relate back to it, and where the storytelling can be construed as and thought of as a coaching behaviour, that's for other people to agree with or disagree with. But I think you're right. I would totally put it in that category and have it as a coaching tool to use at the right time for the right reasons.
Do coaches need to be careful with this? Because obviously you said at the beginning, and I know how well you do this, and that's the know your players part, which, I think all coaches recognise that's important. And I see a lot of good practice around that when I go out and observe coaches, and the coaches clearly know their players. But you have to be a bit careful in telling stories, because obviously you want to be as helpful and supportive as you can as a coach. But likewise, you don't want to necessarily tread on too many personal things that almost cross that line of where you are as the coach-player relationship.
Yeah. The issue here is that with any coaching behaviour, if you do too much of one without balancing out with the others, then that probably wouldn't benefit the kids either. If you're overly command style with them, it's going to become too dictatorial, too authoritative. If you're too passive or too question and answer, it's going to become more, it's going to become more about two-way conversations all the time, and it's going to become more conversation-led rather than football-led. I think you've got to balance it out with whatever's needed at that point. There might be a time within a kid's football session, whatever age group, you might have to be a bit more command style. Sorry, lad, this is what we need to see from you at this moment. Then you might pick the right time to demonstrate, whether that's you demonstrating or getting one of the kids to demonstrate, some more guided discovery. Can you show me what this should look like in this moment? Can you open your body? How can you open your body to see more of the pitch and use that type of language? So this aspect of telling anecdotes and using analogies, apply it at the right time. But if you overdo it and you're constantly referring to this story, that story, this anecdote, this analogy, I think you're going to overdo it. Skill comes with picking the right tool for the right job at the right time. And that comes with experience.
And you have to be sensitive about the stories that you use, because again, I think, we don't know personal circumstances, how much you get to know your players. You don't always necessarily know exactly what's going on at home, or what the finances are like, or what mum and dad's jobs have, all these things that we don't necessarily know. So do we have to be careful what stories we use in case we might touch a nerve or go down a space that's a bit too personal?
Yeah. Well, this comes back to something we spoke about at the beginning, which is connect first. Connect with your players. You've got to connect before you correct. So how can you start advising players on how to develop as footballers or as people before you get to know them? So connect first. Find out about them as young people. Find out about their family, what their home life's like, as much as you're able to, that's within obviously safe and considerate conversation. Only then, when you get to know a group personally and get to know the individuals on a deeper, more personal level, away from just football, only then can you start utilising things like stories, I think, and you know how to apply it, and you know what's relevant to a particular player, and you know what sort of situations or types of story to maybe avoid, because that might not work for that player for whatever reason, because of what they've got going on at home, whatever it might be. But that comes with getting to know them first, and you've got to connect with them first before anything else.
You might have touched this a little bit, but just from your experience, because I know you do this and you've obviously worked in it and you are a good storyteller and it's part of what you do in your coaching. What are the benefits that you've seen? You know, if I'm going to practice and get better at it as a coach and enhance my storytelling skills, at least out on the pitch, if not in a book, what benefits would I see or would my players get from me having that as one of my tools in my locker?
Yeah. So, I mean, some of the other analogies that or anecdotes we've used could be things like when we're getting the kids to press, getting the kids to win the ball back, and we talk about a swarm of bees around honey or wasps around a nest. Talk about a wolf pack trying to get close and trying to dictate and trying to be in control. So when we want the kids to press, it's wolf pack, go and win the ball back, aggressive wolf. And so they're imagining what it feels like to be that animal performing that action for that job. Other things we've used previously would be, for example, when we're getting the kids the high block press in the top third of the pitch, and we want the kids to slide across, get compact, leave the opposite half of the pitch empty. We say, cut the cake in half. Only give your opponents half the cake to eat. Don't let the opponents have the whole cake. You know, make sure there's some left for you. So that's something that we used several years ago. So when the opposition was starting their attack, we just shout out, cut the cake. And the kids would know exactly what it meant because we'd already told the story. We'd already given them the analogy. So that buzzword, that triggers that emotion. You've only got to tell it once, maybe twice to try and reinforce them learning. But then the trigger is the buzzword, and that unleashes the emotion and the feeling within the young player, and they refer back to why you told it to them in the first place. And they link the two together. So that's how benefits of analogy and story can relate to football actions and moments within play itself.
So I guess the story creates the picture and the picture paints 1,000 words, right? It's that kind of thing where you haven't got to have me as the coach spending 5 minutes giving a full intervention around something that, you know, very technical and detailed. Actually, if I can put it across in a short story that creates a visualization, that will have as much, if not hopefully more impact in a shorter space of time, right? And I can refer back to that if I need to.
That's exactly it. You think about the Pavlov's dogs with the bells. And every time the dogs were fed, the bell was rung. So over time, the trigger was, even when the food wasn't present and the bell was rung, the dogs would still salivate because they linked the bell to eating. It's the same as this. It's the buzzword which triggers the feeling. The buzzword triggers the emotion, and it triggers the action that's needed within that moment. So whether it was wolf pack to press or cut the cake to get compact and leave the opposite half of the pitch empty, it's just the buzzword that triggers the emotion.
The more you speak about it and the more you explain it, the more I think, you know what, there are some coaches that I know kind of do some of this stuff. I don't think they know they're doing it, but they do it and you can see how they use it. Probably more common using football stories, you know, than actually non-football stories, but that does happen too, I've seen. But it's certainly an area which I think, you know what, a lot of coaches could work on this and become better at it, which will be, you know, a wonderful thing for them to develop themselves personally and how they approach their coaching. So it's fascinating. I think my last question would be on this specifically would be, you know, how can coaches become good storytellers? Obviously you've done it with the book and you do it in practice out on the grass. What would be some of your tips really for us, you know, who want to embrace this and get better at it? How can we become good at telling stories as part of our coaching? I know it's probably a tough question.
Really good question, but for me, we can all tell stories because we've all lived and had experiences of our own. If I think about, for example, a moment with the group I've had recently that were on a run of a lot of wins, winning a lot of football matches against opposition that at the time wasn't overly challenging, but the boys were winning these games quite comfortably. Performance level was mediocre. And then we came to a particular game against a very, very high level opposition, a local London opposition, and we lost. We lost the game and the kids were devastated. I was delighted because it was the best we played all season. That was our high performance. But at the time, the kids didn't recognise it. They didn't recognise that as the high performance on the back of 10 wins previously. So I thought in my head, I'm going to create a story. I'm going to create an anecdote that relates to this moment that the boys are experiencing. And then I'm going to ask them a question. So I thought in my head, I'm going to create an image of 2 100-metre sprinters, right, in the 100-metre Olympic final. Sprinter A wins the race comfortably in one of his slowest times of the season, but wins the gold medal. Stood on the podium, national anthem going, gold medal around his neck. Fantastic. Sprinter B comes fourth, doesn't get on the podium, but runs a personal best, runs their best ever time. So admittedly disappointed to not be on the podium and to win a medal, but has run their best ever 100 metres. So I gave that outline to the kids and I said, which of those 2 has achieved the highest performance? And I can see them thinking, okay, one of them's won. One of them's the Olympic champion, but it would be the slowest time of the season. Admittedly, yeah, great. But the other one has never, ever, ever run quicker, but not achieved that accolade of being a champion. And for the most part, the majority of the group all agreed that the higher performance level was from the sprinter that finished fourth. And I said, this is exactly where you are at the moment. You've won the last 8, 9, 10 games in a row. But your highest performance was yesterday on that Sunday. This was on a Monday night. Undoubtedly. So believe in yourselves that highest performance level was then. Just because we lost the game doesn't mean it can't be compared to the others. Yeah, you won those, but your performance level yesterday eclipsed it by miles. And if you can believe in yourself and believe that high performance level, it's only going to be beneficial for you further down the line when you're playing against those opposition types again. So for me, we can all become storytellers. It just means when you're driving home from your session or driving home from your game, don't just reflect upon, was my 10 by 10 grid big enough? Did I get my numbers right in the session? That's all great. And that allows you to improve. But apply what you've seen to something in, even if it's a non-football context, but the lesson relates to what they've learned in the session. And then try and package it so that it's brief, so that it involves some type of question at the end or a moral at the end that can be discussed. And there's some great learning that can be had as a result of it. And then ask the kids, get their opinion. And you haven't even got to say, how does this link to football? Because they'll know. If you time it right, like I did it on the Monday night following the Sunday, they knew exactly what I was talking about. I didn't have to say this links into what you're doing right now. Might have had those conversations with a few of the kids afterwards, but didn't really need to. They knew exactly what I was referring to. So we can all be great storytellers. We just got to talk about our experiences. We've got to read. We've got to listen to stories. Read kids' books. There's no greater book than a kid's picture book. Because you know what? There's meanings in there that we can all learn from. And it's not just about the colour and the vivid pictures and the quirkiness of the characters. There's always something in there that we can take away ourselves. So I find myself reading my daughter's picture books even when they've gone to bed, because I love the meaning of a kid's picture story. There's so much value that can come as a result of it.
How important is empathy? How important is the ability to be empathise as a coach with the players that you've got to be able to be a good storyteller?
Yeah, I think empathy is absolutely key. You've got to put yourself in their situation. You've got to feel what they feel. Empathy, I think, is one of the key qualities with a coach. The session isn't about us. We're the least important person in this session. Everything is about the kids. The kids are the priority. So the more empathy you can have for them, the more you can get in their mindset and think, what are they thinking right now? What are they feeling right now? That's one of the most key qualities to become an effective coach. It's not about your football knowledge. You'll learn that anyway from reading, looking on social media, watching games. It's more to it than that. Coaching's about connecting and communicating. It's about being with people and improving young people. So empathy is right up there for me. But that's a people skill. That's a life skill. That's not just a coaching quality.
Paul, that's been absolutely brilliant. I really appreciate you going over that. It's such an interesting topic. I know we've just touched the surface of it really in that half an hour or so we've looked at this specifically, but it's a great topic. And I think part of what we do on this podcast is just to share thoughts and ideas around stuff that we believe will help the kids that we're influencing during the weeks where, where we are. And I think for a lot of our listeners, they'll look at this and they'll be like, actually, do you know what? There's something that I can really think about how I could maybe utilize this a bit more in what I do. We speak a lot about game-based coaching and player ownership and all these things that are wonderful things, and rightly so. We highlight those, and I think they're good things to keep shining a spotlight on. But when we get something new like this, I think it's fascinating, and I hope, and I'm sure listeners will be like, oh, you know what? Let me look a bit more about that. And the point you make about, you know what? If you want to be good at something, then do a lot of it. So if you want to be a good writer, do a lot of reading. Yeah. If you want to be a good actor, watch a lot of films. If you want to be a good coach, watch a lot of coaches. You've got to do these things. So I think what we're doing here is just making people have a different thing to consider, which is great. And hopefully they'll embrace it and take on some of the points you shared. So thanks for that, Paul.
That's a pleasure. And it comes back to me thinking now when you say that about the whole 10,000 hour rule, which has its advocates and has those that maybe don't agree with it quite so much. What I've heard over my time is it's not about 10,000 hours, it's about 10,000 experiences. Those 10,000 experiences are going to allow you to really learn about what it takes to be a young person, to develop as a young person and play in whatever sport they're involved in. It's about what you experience, not about just the time applied.
So true. Well, Paul, moving slightly on then, I wondered, just briefly, because I know I've pushed the time. I always do this. I go, for far too long on this stuff, it's too interesting. I don't have time to ask the questions, but I want to ask you this one because I think it's important. I want to get your view on it. Just any ideas where you think coach might be heading in the next 5 years? I know that's a real hard question to answer, but do you think we're in a good place and not much is going to change, or do you see some big changes in the next 5 years around coaching?
Yeah, I think coaching's come a long way in the last 5 years, and I fully expect it to become to develop even further in the next 5. So I think with the way EPPP is and the way that the age groups within academies and grassroots football and recreational football is categorised into age phases, I think we're going to see more specialists in those phases, a foundation phase specialist, an early youth development phase specialist, a professional development phase specialist, I think a specialist in education. I mean, these roles are already in place in football clubs. A specialist, an expert in player liaison, an expert in all manner of different areas within a football club. I think that's vital towards a young person's development. Everyone from people that work in safeguarding to analysis to medical to strength and conditioning to travel, all of these people in all of these departments have an influence over a young person's development. That's the holistic, multidisciplinary aspects of football. They all play a part. So if you look at Bukayo and Emil in the Arsenal first team, they've had influence of all those people in those different departments. They've been helped by someone in the travel team. They've been helped by someone in the player liaison team. Yeah. It's not just about their coaches right now in the first team that get, quite rightfully so, the plaudits for putting them in the first team at the right time, great. But over the last 10, 15 years, boys such as that have had so much help and support from any number of people that work in very non-football related roles, but have massive impact upon what they see on the pitch as well. So I think that's how football is going to develop, with specialists and experts in all manner of different areas. And I think that's going to be key for development for kids as they get older over the next few years and in coaching.
Brilliant. Well, I appreciate that because I know, in the world you're at and the people you know and everything and what you do, I value your opinion around that, and it's fascinating to hear what your thoughts are. And I agree. I think we've improved loads. Even the grassroots space, I think coaches improved a lot over the last 5 years. Still a long way to go, but it's definitely on the right path. And it's good to hear that things are, equally, if not even more so, in the world that you're in. If there was one thing you could change in the world of coaching, what might that be?
That's a really tough one.
Right, because there's too many things to change, or there's not enough.
Possibly. We can always get better. Things can always improve. If I think about off the pitch as well as on the pitch, I think about when clubs set out with a vision and values and expected behaviours, and those vision and values are presented to staff and to parents and to players. That's great. All really, really nicely packaged together with great words and great terminology, whatever's used to try and educate people within the football club. What has to change is that those values have to be lived and breathed, and there's no point just being presented to a group of people and then not acted upon. So clubs, when they set about creating these values of expected behaviour and this vision and this philosophy of what the football club stands for, that's great, but you've got to live it, you've got to action it, you've got to live and breathe it, and you've got to treat people with the respect that they deserve and the humility that comes with it. So I think that's one thing that can improve, setting about a vision and value, and making sure that you 100% believe in it and act upon it. I also think that on social media, for example, you see a lot of people share session plans and quite rightfully get lots of connection, lots of dialogue, and that's great. What you don't see, and I think that might have come out a little bit within this episode, hopefully, is that you very rarely see help for coaches around psychology, social improvement of players, development and challenges and tasks that can be used to help young players develop socially, with their engagement with each other, their social confidence. So if you can see as much of that as you do the football bit, I think that's only going to be more valuable, a really valuable tool for young coaches as they grow up and become more knowledgeable and experienced. And you can really then marry the two together, because one without the other, for me, for the benefit of the young players, is not going to work. They've got to be psychologically strong, socially resilient, as well as be good footballers. So to educate coaches with both is only going to be a valuable tool, I think, moving forwards.
Brilliant, Paul. Super. Well, that's a great answer to that question. Really good. And now, just to finish off, then, really, your plans. What's in line for you? I know we spoke before we hit the record button, so feel free to share as little as you want about your own circumstances right now. I don't want to put you, in any position saying that you don't want to say, but I'll start this, if that's okay, by saying, I see a lot of coaches, Paul, and a lot of great coaches as well. But speaking to you over the last year or so, coming to observe your session, I haven't seen, I don't think, a better session, if I'm honest with you, that I saw with what I saw when you delivered your session. It was a privilege to watch it. And I don't know that I've met a better set of players, articulate, polite, well-mannered. And look, don't get me wrong, I'm sure their parents have a big influence in that as well. But they were in your environment at that time when I saw them. They were under your umbrella. And they weren't putting an act to me. That is, you could say 100%, and that's how they are in that space. And I'm sure there's lots of people that have influenced that, I'm sure, but there's no doubt that you were a big part of that. It really is a privilege to talk to you again, because you genuinely preach what you say and you do it really effectively. So, you're a fantastic coach, but, situation and what's your plans moving forward?
Yeah, so my situation's changed recently in the last week or so, that I'm going to be moving on to my next opportunity very shortly, which is disappointing. I leave with a lot of pride and my head held very, very high with the work that I've carried out at the football club. And there's no greater feedback that you get when you move on from one employment to the next than the response that you get from your peers and from your colleagues, and in this instance from players and parents. The response I've had has been utterly overwhelming. I've had phone calls every day from people that work at the football club, from people that don't work at the football club anymore and moved on to other employment, but know what's happened. The parents have been wonderful to me. The kids, I've obviously built some fantastic relationships with them, and yeah, of course they're upset, but their feedback to me has been really, really valuable. I'm so grateful and proud of the work I've done at the football club, but I'm obviously have to move on. So I'm excited about the next step, whatever that's going to be. I'm someone who has a lot of ambition, and at this present moment, I retain a lot of confidence in my ability as a football person and as a coach and as an educator of young people, particularly in the foundation phase. So I see myself in a role that challenges me as a person, not just as a coach. I see coaching as something that isn't just about the time spent on the grass, that I hope we've covered in this conversation. And yeah, I just want to carry on supporting young people with football being the vehicle to do that. Love my football. I will always be passionate about it as the most passionate thing in my life, apart from my family. But it's only the vehicle that drives my want and desire to help young people. It's only the vehicle that drives that. Young people and their development as players and as people is more important than the football bit. Football's just a bonus bit that we get to wear our kit and play football with the kids every night of the week. So whatever the situation or whatever the opportunity is, I'm excited about it. It's always daunting moving on to to a new opportunity, but I'm excited, ambitious, and yeah, let's just see what's out there for me.
Well, look, thanks for sharing that, Paul, and thanks for the whole episode again. It's 2 fantastic episodes with you. That you're at the coalface doing the job. You do it superbly well, and getting your views on these topics is invaluable to the people that listen to the podcast. On a personal note, I just want to say, whoever gets you, Paul, wherever you end up going, please let us know, because they're going to be very lucky to have you. There's no doubt about that. And I'm fascinated to see where your journey goes. So I hope you do stay in contact with us and keep us updated. I know it's going to be wonderful. And I know, whatever children you get to support, they're going to have a wonderful journey. Thank you so much for today. It's much appreciated. If people do want to reach out to you, Paul, is there the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah, so I've obviously got a presence on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Whether it's possible to share that information with the show notes when you put the episode out, that would be great. I'm always welcome to receive feedback from people. Hopefully you can not hear my dog barking in the background too much.
Dog's had enough. Look. Must be dinner time for the dog.
But yeah, that's the best way to get in touch. And I meet a lot of great coaches and great people on those platforms. And I'm always willing to help out people, whether that's reading some research that someone sent me or providing a book review, for example, that I've done recently. I'm always willing to put time aside for others that hopefully when I was young, people would have put time aside for me to help develop and learn and get better as a person, as a coach. So yeah, they're the best ways to get in touch.
Well, Paul, we'll put that in the show notes, both the LinkedIn and the Twitter handle as well. And on the bit about supporting coaches, look, you were kind enough to let me come and observe a session. You've been on 2 podcasts now. We chat a bit in between as well and stuff like that. You've been a massive help to me personally. I know the stuff you say helps our listeners too. So honestly, Paul, it's really appreciated. It really is. And I look forward to hearing what your next adventure is when you're there, and we'll get back on and chat about it, if that's okay.
Yeah, brilliant. That'd be a podcast hat trick then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also the book's going to be out hopefully sometime soon.
Yeah, so the current book's been out for about a month. That's available on Amazon.
Yep.
Which I'm proud of that we've spoken about. The second one I'm looking to try and release around April, May time. I'm getting daily updates from my illustrator. The illustrations are absolutely amazing. The imagery within the books and the meaning hopefully is going to be something that I will feel a lot of pride in when I read it, and whether other people want to take it on board and read to utilize, whether that's just as a parenting tool or a coaching tool. I'm really excited to bring it out, and that should be in 2 or 3 months time.
Well, I'll be looking out for it. Please let me know when it is out, because I'll be getting it straight away.
Yeah.
Paul, you've been a star again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks again for the opportunity to come on and talk. It's been really great seeing you again.